Welcome back to the beginner's course for consultants. Now, in one of the previous lessons, I explained how to handle the implementation projects, how to make sure that you go through all of the implementation steps with the client. But the problem is that usually in this kind of complex implementation projects, usually there are some gaps left. So if a client goes for a certification, you have to make sure that you fill all these gaps and have a successful certification. So in this lesson today, you'll learn what are the most common problems that happen at ISO certification audits. Also, what are the last steps a client needs to take before actually going for a certification. Then what will the certification auditor focus on, what they will be looking for. And finally, how a consultant can help clients with these major potential problems at the certification. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea on how to decrease the chances of something going wrong at a certification audit. And by the way, this video is relevant not only if your client goes for, let's say, ISO 27001 or 9001 certification, it's also valid in cases where you're preparing your clients for an audit by a government authority against some regulations like DORA or NIS2. Because these authorities will be actually looking for the same things as the certification body for ISO standard. Okay, let's see first what are the most common problems at certification audit. First of all, sometimes companies do not have all the documentation that is needed. So for example, if they go for 27001 or 42001 certification, they must have a statement of applicability. If this is missing, then obviously they will get a non-conformity. Now, this kind of a non-conformity is rather rare. It's maybe a 20% or even less at the certification audit. What is more common is the second type of non-conformities, is that employees in the company do not know the right answer during the certification audit. So for example, a certification auditor might ask them, okay, how do you approve the access according to access control policy? And then they might not know the right answer there. And this kind of non-conformities might happen, let's say, in maybe 30% of the cases. But the most common problem or non-conformity of the certification audits is that the employees are not complying with internal documents like policies, procedures, plans and others, and this usually creates between 50 and 70% of the non-conformities at the audit. As an example, let's say that your backup policy says that you have to perform a backup every 6 hours for a particular system, and then the auditor finds that you're doing the backup every 24 hours. So these kind of non-conformities are not against a standard, they're actually against an internal rule that the company itself has published, which is kind of an absurd, right? Why did the company publish something that its own employees are really not following and the standard itself is not requiring? So let me explain you what are the last steps that need to be done during the implementation projects that are required by the standard, but that can also help you resolve some of the problems that I mentioned. One of the last steps is the internal audit, which means that someone has to check internally if all the employees are complying with everything that they should be doing. So if this internal audit is done properly, then you will uncover most of the problems that I mentioned, and this is how you actually prevent things going wrong at the certification audit. Then after the internal audit, the client needs to perform a management review. This is where the senior management needs to be included, and they need to make some crucial decisions around their management system. But this is also a great rehearsal before the certification audit, because this will remind the senior management on what this whole management system is about, so that once they start talking to a certification auditor, and yes, certification auditor will talk to them as well, then they will at least know what this is about. And then a company also has to perform these corrective actions. So either you find these non-conformities during the internal audit, or maybe in management review, or in some other way, you need to have this systematic way of resolving all these non-conformities, and these are called corrective actions. And this is a great opportunity for a company to practice resolving these issues in a systematic way and according to this corrective action procedure. And if this is done correctly, then this will be certainly a positive sign for the certification auditor. So what can you do as a consultant to help companies with these three steps? You can actually train or help this internal auditor perform this work. You cannot do it yourself because you would be in a conflict of interest. For management review, you can help the person in charge to collect all the materials and let's say brief brief the senior management or even train the senior management on what needs to be done. And for corrective actions, again, you can help a person in charge to actually do this according to a procedure so that nothing is missing there. Okay, now let's see what will the certification auditor look for. How do they actually find the evidence within the company? So first, they will review all the documents and relevant records. And it's important to understand this because they will not read only the policies and procedures that a client has been producing. They will also ask for concrete evidence. So this example that I already mentioned, if the backup policy says that you have to do a backup in certain frequency, the auditor will actually ask for an evidence, in this case a backup log, to see really how often this backup is being done. And it's as easy as telling to let's say a backup administrator, okay, please show me the screen where you actually have all the logs for that particular system. Second way for an auditor to find evidence is by personal observations. So if a company has specified that it has let's say CCTV cameras placed in certain positions in facilities, then the auditor will walk around these facilities and observe if these cameras really exist in those places. And the third type of evidence is for an auditor to interview various employees. And actually auditors prefer this type of finding evidence the most because this is how they uncover lots of things that are done right, but also lots of things that are done wrong. So for example, if this auditor is speaking to a backup administrator, he will not ask only about backup logs. He will also ask about how do you approve the access, how do you safeguard the access to this backed up data, and so on and so forth. And this actually gives an auditor an ability to find out further evidence that he or she is interested in. So what is the point here? The point is that these audits will be very, very thorough. It's not going to be only about reading, policies and procedures. It's going to be much more about finding evidence that this is really happening in this company in the right way. And the second point is you actually, as a consultant, have to ensure that whatever policies and procedures this company is writing, that they do make sense. I mean, why a company would write that they need to do the backup every 6 hours when the risks and regulations allow that this can be done every 24 hours. So you have to make sure that your client is not creating some kind of an overhead that is really not necessary. And by the way, in my advanced course for consultants, you will see one lesson that speaks even in more detail on what kind of evidence is required. Now let's see how consultants can help their clients overcome these three problems that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So first of all, to make sure that they have all the documents, you can do this so-called pre-audit check. This is not an internal audit because again, internal audit should be done by a separate person. But when you do this pre-audit check, basically you're checking if all the documents are in place and you map them towards the requirements of the standard. And you can organize this pre-audit check as some kind of a workshop with the client, because then the client actually learns in a much better way on what they have to correct. With regards to this second problem that the employees do not know all the answers during a certification audit, you can organize training and awareness for this client, where you will make sure that all the targeted audience within the company know about the standard and, more importantly, know about all the internal policies and procedures in order to make sure that they comply with them. And in one of the previous lessons of this course, I explained how to organize a training project. Of course, you will also have to work with managers that are in charge of particular policies and procedures and make sure that they understand how they can control their employees, whether they're implementing everything that is written in these documents. And regarding the third problem, that employees are not complying with everything that is written in these policies and procedures, there are a couple of ways that you can help your client. Besides this training and awareness that is also very important for employees to really comply with these documents, you should also organize writing of these documents so that you include all the relevant people in the company. So for example, when you write a first draft of a particular document, let's say a backup policy, then you should send it for review to all the people in the company that are actually performing this backup. So you might have, let's say, 1 or 2 backup administrators, you might have a head of IT department, so they should actually review this document and give you comments on how you can improve this document. And by doing this, you will actually achieve 2 benefits. First, you will have a much better document because it will be much more realistic and much more aligned with what this company is doing. Second, you will have at least their partial, I would say, commitment, because if you actually include all of their suggestions, then they will know that they participated in this and that this document is partially of their own doing. And that, of course, increases the chance that they will comply with this document. Finally, you have to make sure that a person who really has an authority within the company is approving this document. Because if it is not approved, or it is approved by someone who doesn't have the power in the company, then people in the company will probably not consider this as something important. And finally, this document, of course, needs to be distributed to all of the relevant employees. And besides this, you also have to work with the managers who are in charge of executing these documents, and basically work with them and explain them how they can control their own employees, whether they're doing whatever is written in those documents. And when doing all of these activities as a consultant, if you see that you are blocked by someone or something, then you should go to the project sponsor and actually ask for this person to unblock whatever is blocking you in doing this. And of course, if you perform this pre-audit check, especially in the form of a workshop, then you can do a role play where you act, let's say, as a certification auditor. And when you start asking these questions towards various people, then you will know exactly if they are really doing what they should be doing and if they're ready for the certification. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about how to prepare a client for the certification audit, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And here are a couple of materials that can help you learn more about preparation for the certification, and you'll find the links below the video. First of all, you have this advanced course where I explain more advanced techniques for consultants, and one of the lessons there is, as I mentioned, this lesson about what are the evidence and how to prepare this evidence for certification audit. Second, you'll see this Secure and Simple podcast. This is a podcast where I'm the host, and I interview various successful consultants, and there you can hear lots of examples on how they work with clients and how they actually prepare their clients for whatever goals they have, including preparation for certification. And in the next lesson of this beginner's course, you'll see how to handle intellectual property, privacy and security, which is always a very important aspect of when you handle any kind of consulting project. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos. And I publish videos about cybersecurity and compliance and governance every week. Thanks for watching.